Yeah, I mean, I looked at the resurrection of Jesus, whether he backed it up by returning from the dead, and I kind of summarize it in the 5 E's, I call it.
Okay.
5 letters that begin, words that begin with the letter E. First one is execution. Was Jesus put to death? Was he really executed? Was he really dead when he was taken down from the cross?
Yeah, some people today say, no, you revived in the tomb. We're going to look at all that. Keep
Right,
going.
right, absolutely. I mean, and then we have early accounts. In other words, things that cannot be the product of legend. We have an empty tomb that even his enemies agreed was empty. We have eyewitness accounts. 515 people encountered the resurrected Jesus. And then we have the emergence of the church right there in Jerusalem, which is inexplicable apart from the disciples of Jesus telling the truth about his resurrection from the dead.
And you systematically went through every one of those points, and which we're going to do in the next program. And the bottom line was what?
Well, bottom line is, you go through that and you weigh the evidence honestly and fairly. And I found myself agreeing with Sir Lionel Luckhoo, the greatest lawyer who ever lived, who won 245 murder trials in a row, either before a jury or on appeal, who was an atheist until he studied the evidence, took his monumental legal skill and applied it to the historical record, and his conclusion was, quote, I say unequivocally that the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ is so overwhelming that it compels acceptance by proof that leaves absolutely no room for doubt.
We've got skeptics, we've got PhDs, we've got kids in college, high school, we've got adults that are just wondering about these things, and they are where you were at, okay, and they're listening to this to kind of tell them why they need to stay tuned for next week.
Well, first of all, I think this is the pivotal issue, and the Apostle Paul said it. If Jesus has not been raised, our faith is futile. We're still in our sins. I mean, this is the issue, the number one issue, because anybody can make the claim you're divine, but can you prove it by returning from the dead? So I think it's that monumentally important. I think it is the pivotal event of history. And I think if people look at it with an open mind, with an open heart, they make it a front burner issue in their life, and they kind of say to themselves, you know what, when the evidence is in, I'm going to reach a verdict. With that kind of attitude, if you investigate the evidence for yourself, I think it's pretty hard not to come to the kind of conclusion that Sir Lionel Luckhoo came to.